Welcome to On the Bench. I'm Chris. I'm joined by Zach, Brendan from a Subaru, and Brett's there somewhere in the background where you cannot see him right now. Before we get into it, real quick about our sponsors, going to talk a little bit about Chattanooga Whiskey. I'm not the king of ad reads. We all know that's Trey Rowland, but I do have a little something to tell you about it, according to Brendan. And that is that Chattanooga Whiskey batch 45 cola infused. They're excited to announce this release. It's inspired by Chattanooga's long history of cola, C-O-L-A products. This is spelled K-O-L-A. It merges the flavor of classic 19th and 20th century American cola with the complementary flavors of high malt bourbon, naturally infused with a variety of traditional cola, again with the C, ingredients including citrus peel, sarsaparilla. Woo! That one got me. Vanilla and cola nut. Each botanical was steeped in the bourbon for over a week prior to the addition of cane sugar. You can find more of that anywhere you find press releases from Chattanooga Whiskey. Brendan, how would people go about finding that?
Well, for that one specifically, that would probably be a Chattanooga Whiskey Distillery type of deal. Maybe you can go on Sealbacks. That's not going to be one you're probably going to be able to find readily in your neighborhood liquor store. But if you are looking for just standard 111 proof, which is awesome, any of their normal line or some other unique stuff like a Bottle and Bond, you can go ahead and find that in liquor stores throughout the state of Florida.
And what do you do after you drink some Chattanooga whiskey?
I think
The Turner Group.
Well, okay, we jumped ahead a little bit.
Zach just pulled a Chris and got ahead of the actual, where we were in the show.
I was going to say, you go on the computer, you start looking up at the Zillow listings, you're like, hey, I want to buy this mansion, and it's a good idea. And then you call
the Turner Group. Amy and Colin. I don't want to call them I'm sorry, I said Amy and Colin when I meant to say Colin and Amy.
Yeah, I think it's fine. We it
equal opportunity here. We're equal opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. So I always suggest go check out their Instagram. I think it gives you a great look into their business, the kind of people they are, the way they work, what they do with the homes that they sell, the way they work for their clients. Also, just reach out to them. Good people, FSU people first and foremost. That always makes people good most of the time, at least I think. And they just work really, really hard for people. Zach can attest to that personally. If you want to reach out to him and ask him about him and his family's experience with them, it's not just because they sponsored a show that we think highly of them. We think highly of them because they've earned that thought from us. All right, let's get into it. So it's Kent State week. I know that excites the masses. It certainly has excited us this week. Let me tell you. Woo, motivation.
Brendan, you have Kent State gear on?
It's Transformers gear.
Oh my God.
You ain't beating the allegation, boys.
Worse.
All right, so what are we excited about with Kent State? It might be the fact that we might see some people make their debut on the field. One person we won't see is Kevin Wynn. It sounds like he's still at least a week off from what Mike Norvell said yesterday. But who might we see, Sonnone?
We might see LaWayne McCoy, which would be really nice for Florida State because this poor guy has had injuries both, I think, the first day of spring practice and maybe like the second day of fall camp. And apparently was great those days before he got hurt, too. He may have had a few days more in fall camp when I think about it. But, yeah, he's really good for them in the offseason. Last year when we were at practice, like he was by far the most advanced freshman wide receiver. We saw that kind of manifest itself in just playing time. Mike Norvell talked about him being a tier 1 guy for them the other day. I thought that stuck out. And additionally, like he's just someone who can play multiple spots too at wide receiver. He can be that 2 wide receiver, the off-ball guy from them. He can play slot. I think he's got enough juice to where he can create as the 9 wide receiver as well. So there's like a lot to like about LaWayne McCoy. We'll see. It sounds like, Chris, it'll be kind of snap count-ish for him in the first game back, and you also have to see how he does the rest of the week. But it's trending in a good direction for them, which coincidentally comes at a good time because you might be without another wide receiver this week.
And that is Squirrel White. He is still wearing some form or fashion of a hand brace because of the left hand, I believe it was, injury that he suffered in the last game on a punt return later in that game. He was described as, I think, questionable / hopeful was sort of the words used, but I don't think he'll play this week. I think the goal is to get him healthy for the ACC opener with Virginia next Friday. It does sound like he's trending in a positive direction, though, and the return should be in the very near future, which is a positive for FSU, with the fact that when the calendar turns October, you got Miami and plenty of others coming. One last thing to add on the little dynamics of those two in that discussion is Luane is somebody that could maybe factor into punt returns as well. If Squirrel is unavailable, Jalen Lucas is your first guy up. Deuce Robinson is listed on the depth chart this week as your third name, second technically punt returner behind Squirrel and Jalen Lucas.
If Jalen Lucas and Squirrel White are the co-starters, does that make Deuce number 2 in line or number 3?
Technically, he'd be the third person.
All right.
So, but I think Luane McCoy might have a shot of doing that if they're comfortable. Luane's issue was something along the lines of a knee, so obviously lower body. So I don't know if they want to put him out there where he can take kind of a free shot as a punt returner.
Yeah,
I do think eventually he plays punt returner.
Because didn't Norvell say that he is going to be on like a pitch count this weekend?
Yes, specifically use pitch count.
I asked Mike about punt returner specifically for this week. The way he answered made me sound like Jalen Lucas is going to be the guy and maybe the only guy, unless they want to do some reps later in the game. They're just kind of work through that. But
that's something that I know we've talked about as a concern, the punt return unit. I mean, Norvell provided some context in his presser, saying that I guess they were not expecting, like, the punts haven't been very good for the opposing punters. They've been shorter than those guys have shown on film before.
Yeah, East Texas, I think, was in the 30s, not consistently very good. And then Bama kid, who was a transfer in for them, didn't punt like he did at his prior institution. So it kind of, caused that.
So it doesn't sound like there's much concern with that unit. I mean, he did say that they need to clean up some stuff, but I don't think it's as much of a concern.
He specifically said, catch the ones that you should catch. They've let a couple probably hit the ground that they shouldn't have. And, they had a good return that came back because of penalties. I think Shaheem Brown was one flagged on that specific one he was referencing. So, clean those things up and you'll be better in that department. But that is probably an area for critiquing this team where a big jump is allowed to happen. Like, they have the most possibility of doing something significantly different moving forward at that spot than they have through 2 games. All right. Other big news of the week before we dump a little bit on Kent State is UCLA and Virginia Tech open, but we don't care about the Hokies here. We will later in the year, but not right now. We care about UCLA right now. And why do we care about UCLA? Because someone who went to UCLA is currently coordinating Florida State's defense and doing a really quality job of doing it. He's also done a really good job at prior institutions such as Nebraska, where he came from before FSU. Who are we talking about? That's Tony White. You want to lay it out there a little bit, Sonnone, since you wrote about it earlier this week when Mike was asked about it by you?
Yeah, so Tony White, obviously the ties to UCLA are pretty evident. He played there. I think one note that's important as well is when he went to the CFL, was trying to make it as a pro for a few years, his return home was Los Angeles. So, that's what he considered home. He's lived multiple places throughout his life, even before becoming a coach, which we know he bounced around a lot there too. So he's someone who didn't have a traditional singular place for a very long period of time. And so LA being home for him and being kind of home base, I think is an important distinction to make here when talking about the UCLA job. But that job opens up. Tony obviously has connections there as a player, and a head coaching job's a head coaching job. We know that he interviewed there before. Our UCLA, when it opened 2 years ago, our UCLA site did report that a lot of that process was just they kind of had Deshaun Foster on their list. That's who it was going to be. And so a lot of that stuff was, I guess, for show, for lack of a better phrase. But there was also a lot of criticism of the UCLA job, which I think we can get into of how the administration handled the last process, just what the athletic department looks like now. From far away, it seems kind of dumpster fire-ish, to be honest with you guys. That's pretty much an opinion held by national pundits throughout the country. But when asked Mike Norvell about it, I didn't ask it directly. I mean, I mentioned the UCLA job. I think I was fairly direct with it, but I was like, when a job opens up or there's an opportunity for one of your coaches to advance, and it was in the context of the UCLA job here for Tony, what do you tell them? How do you kind of handle that? I thought Mike's answer was good. It was a little meandering, as I am doing myself right now, but the part of it that really stood out was him saying, we have an obligation as coaches to Florida State, to the players, and also to yourself and your family. So that balance, I think, is going to be important because we're 2 games into the season for these programs, or 3 games. there's this process is starting earlier than ever before. And so having an idea of what timeline's going to look like when the interview process starts, when UCLA, Virginia Tech, whatever else opens in the next coming weeks, like when they want to actually make hires, so they want it to be well before the early signing period. Like that's all stuff that is uncharted territory. So yeah, I just kind of laid out that's what Mike said. That's kind of what the job looks like. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on what we're hearing or even just what we're thinking about this opportunity for Tony White. I know FSU fans are nervous. You're only going to get a season with him, if that. Zach, go ahead.
Here's my really great intel, deep digging. Tony White's followed like 20 UCLA related accounts or like national reporters covering the search in the last like couple days since it opened. So I do think there's interest from Tony, which makes a lot of sense. And while I don't think that like a lot of high-end coordinators or G5 head coaches are going to be super interested in this job, I think Tony White's kind of the perfect candidate because I think he's willing to overlook some of the athletic department, university issues that are going on there it's pretty evident. They've got some stuff they need to sort
Time out real quick. What do we know about we're just saying that.
So Martin Germond, who's the AD, isn't viewed in a very positive light. Basically, he's viewed as having botched the last search for a coach and other portions of the athletic department as far as like fundraising and things. UCLA currently is operating with a massive deficit. I believe it's around $220 million over the past 6 years.
That's a lot.
That's obviously one of those things that you don't want to go into where there's a big hole financially, especially in this day and age where financials is driving the game more than ever. They played in the Rose Bowl still, which is a spectacular venue as someone who's been there and watched FSU win a national title in said stadium. But like it's a pain in the backside to get to for 6 to 7 home games in a year. It's very rarely ever crowded, and that's not solely because UCLA hasn't been good. They are probably a program that desperately needs a on-campus or immediately near campus facility. Those are just a few of the things. Those are kind of the basics. A lot of national talk. I forget who the national sports writer I was listening to on XM, but she is a UCLA grad.
Nicole Arbach.
But I think she's Michigan. I thought it was Nicole initially, but I think it was her show. I think it was her show. But they just were talking about how like it's not really set up for success. And honestly, they were talking about both VTech and that job, and they were saying which is a better job. And they said at this point, VTech probably is. There's an effort at VTech to fundraise to improve athletics, something that they started. Whit Babcock isn't the greatest AD because I think the game's kind of passed him by with where we are in collegiate athletics now. But he's a guy that is very committed to the university, he works for it at the same time. And I think Whit is someone who's kind of understand they need to morph and change based on like his talk of hiring a GM the other day, for example. And just the point of the conversation was that like UCLA's issues are so significant that there's probably a need for massive change there for it to really be an appealing job. So that's a little bit. Right now, Tim Skipper, who was on the staff with Foster there, is the interim head coach. He has previously been a head coach, I believe, at Fresno State. Tim worked at UF way back when. That's where I know his name most familiarized with me from. It will be interesting to see that UCLA job, and as it gets into the market, how appealing it really is. Like how many people just very quickly come out and say, yeah, no, I'm not going there, like turn it down. So
do we think Chris paid any attention to anything that was happening? Just that
I saw the gentleman walk by your window. I saw you get very uncomfortable.
He's got the leaf blower going, and then he just went. But he's been hovering around the car for like 30 seconds of just blowing like shit off my car. My car's filthy right now. It needs to wash. That leaf blower ain't doing anything, dude. Zach, sorry. Continue.
All right, so why do you think Tony White should go to UCLA despite the negatives of the current situation with that job?
I don't think he should go. I don't think it's a good job or a setup, but I think that he'd be open to it. And a big reason why is I just think his mantra defensively and just as a coach is that he can do more with less. He's kind of proven that throughout his career. And I think even given the setup at UCLA, I do think that he'd be in a position to, coach those guys up to a degree better than maybe their talent is on paper. And I do have some questions. Like, I think he'd have to hire some good staffers around him there. And he's got some connections across the country, and obviously brought guys like T Knight and Evan Cooper over to FSU with him, and Zach Arnett's obviously a guy that he's super connected with. So that'd be interesting to see which guys would go with him if he does take it. But I do think it's something to watch, because I think this is the type of job that he would very much consider. He's already heavily considered that job, like Brendan said, in the last cycle, the last hiring cycle for UCLA. And apparently they said he came into that interview like super prepared, and knew exactly what he wanted to do to try and
almost off-putting to Martin Jamon, supposedly, because he had such a plan for how UCLA needed to go. And according to reports from our UCLA side on 24/7, the UCLA AD didn't believe that UCLA was at a point where it needed to basically like redefine its future. And now obviously fast forward 18, 20 months basically, and yeah, it does. One other note on why UCLA is in a great job in the national viewpoint is it's a Big Ten schedule. You're in Los Angeles, and that's not a particularly easy schedule, and it's also a lot of travel on that schedule.
And didn't they take less money for a few years, partial share?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
They did it. Maybe it was Oregon and Washington who did the second time through.
All I know, UCLA has money though. Like, they were spending pretty big in the trenches this cycle. Like, I know for a fact that they were dropping a lot of money for players in the state of Florida, and they have a top 100 defensive line commit. I think out of New Jersey or Massachusetts.
Has any of that been paid?
I think some of it's front loaded.
Some of it might be okay, fair.
Yeah.
So like NIL is immensely important, and they were spending, as Zach is pointing out. I think the issue for them is more the big picture of running a healthy football program from a financial standpoint, away from purchasing players, from facilities, having the ability to train players, hire staff at a high level. Foster was not getting paid a big sum of money, which is another reason people think that the hire there will be somebody that comes at a relatively cheaper price than going to hire an enormous name where you're paying, 9 to 11 million a year.
Well, in general, like as we look at the UCLA job, I just find this fascinating. It's like college football has always kind of been like a who's who and a who's not for the most part. And I feel like I know the playoff field's been expanded. You get like an Arizona State that has a chance to make a run, every year. But by and large, like the true contenders, the year in, year out, it's like it's what, a dozen to 20 schools that you'd say would have a chance if everything's well oiled and whatnot. And so just the seats that are at the proverbial table are just finite. There's just not a lot of it. And so to Chris's initial point, it's a head coaching job. It's a head coaching job on a resume. It's like, could he hold off for a better one? But like there's again, 15 out of 135 schools that would have a really good head coaching opportunity for you. This one's unique, and it makes sense if he is interested.
Sometimes when you have skin in the game, there's a degree of like you'll make the effort to do something.
It's more valuable to hit that job's probably more, I would imagine, more valuable to Tony White than it is to 99% of college coaches.
I mean, UCLA has some great history. Terry Donahue as a head coach, Troy Aikman at quarterback, Jonathan Ogden on O-line. Those are just a couple guys I know off my head.
All of this.
Oh, I know. None of it's relatively recent, but I'm just saying that's a program that if they want to decide to be committed to football, I think there's a pool of people they can go to help with that commitment. But they haven't shown the ability to do that or the desire to do that to this point in time. It will be interesting. Sometimes when you're a national embarrassment, there's a high likelihood they could go winless on the year. Like at some point you get tired of that and you do something to change it, and financials changes that. It'll be interesting as this evolves between now and basically end of November, December, when a hire is almost certainly going to come. What does that program do about it? Is there a change at AD? Is there a change in the financials of it all? How do they go about doing this?
And I think that's the trepidation. Really, like Florida State fans want Tony White for multiple years, and I think we'd always talked about it was probably going to be 2. If it went well, it was only going to be a couple of years max, and if it went poorly, it was always going to be just a couple of years max. So, but you're hoping to max that out and get those 2 seasons. If this UCLA job is really of interest to him, and based on the follows, it would seem like it's at least of some interest, as Zach pointed out, unless it's just this great tactic that he's using to knew that Zach was going to look it up, to talk about it, and then get Michael Alford to start, making calls to good old Jimmy. I'm assuming he's somewhere in Jimmy's Sexton's Rolodex. But I digress. Really, what's going to be interesting and fascinating from the FSU perspective is, are you going to get a full season with him? And I think that's where Mike Norvell's words about like we have an obligation to our players in this program too, I think kind of resonated to me because Chris mentioned November, December timeline. I think that's reasonable for like if you're starting the process this early, you want to get a coach in place to try to avoid this transition class. And so what happens if Tony White, if just, or any of, or Gus Malzahn, let's say Arkansas comes open and like, in that midway point of the year, like what happens if your coordinators and coaches are being courted? Well, and these are good problems to have, but they're being courted by schools for other jobs, and those other jobs are saying, this job's yours if you start in November. And if you're Florida State and you have 9-10 wins at that point, midway through November, and you have a chance. And again, good problems to have. I didn't think we'd be talking about this a month ago. Like, how does that happen? Is that a distraction? And those are just down the road. Those are all things I think that fans have some level of anxiety over. And I just find it fascinating because it's an uncharted territory in terms of timeline. We just haven't dealt with jobs opening this early before.
It's a changing face of college football, and the fact that the calendar is not fair to coaches or the dynamics of everything that goes on. Everything's rushed, so schools are scared of being kind of left out in the cold. I think the only way UCLA circumvents it beyond hiring a head coach is hiring like a GM to operate it, kind of like a Frank Reich, or I'm sorry, not Frank Reich, Andrew Luck situation at Stanford. Where you have sort of a person in charge who can help with some of that. But obviously, head coach is immensely important. All right, I think we've spent enough time talking about UCLA personally.
UCLA and On the Bench podcast production. Wait.
So yeah, FSU plays Kent State this weekend. They're putrid. They're awful. To give you some numbers, they are 2-25 since the start of 2023 season. They snapped a 21-game losing streak when they beat mighty Merrimack College earlier this year. They've not won a MAC game since November of 2022.
I already know the answer to this. Do you know where Merrimack, because Chris tested me on it, and I was wrong a few weeks ago. You know where Merrimack College is, Zach?
Is it somewhere in the Northeast?
Yes, that's what I said too.
The Northeast is big, boys.
Is it though? It's kind of its thing, is it's not very big.
I don't know, Virginia?
It's not the Northeast.
Chime in here, Brett. Come on. You want to. You're on camera.
Did Zach just say the Northeast and then say Virginia?
Oh, I thought they said it wasn't in the Northeast.
Somewhere in Massachusetts.
That is correct. North Andover.
Thanks, Brett. Might drop in there.
Bye, Brett.
Chris threw me off. He said that's where the big boys play.
The one player, so Kent State last week played Buffalo, and they actually had a real shot of winning that game, but in Kent State fashion, they lost. The thing I took from watching that, and I watched Kent State Buffalo. That's how tough my life has become. I watched East Texas A&M, SMU. What am I doing with myself? Drew DeShields, their quarterback for Kent State. He's played in all 3 games, but that was sort of him taking it and running with it against Buffalo. It's actually not half bad. He stood out to me, and then Cade Wolford, who's a wide receiver for them. He's had a touchdown catch in every game this year. Ultra productive at receiver. Those are really the 2 guys that grabbed my attention.
Are you putting them on your transfer portal, your Tampa portal list?
So Wolford, I definitely would. I believe I think he's a second-year freshman or maybe even a first-year freshman.
All right. But off topic, because it's me, but it is MAC adjacent. There's a wide receiver at Miami. No, sorry, just Ohio. The green team, right? Ohio's green. Yeah, Bobcats. Yeah. I can't remember his name, but he's a little badass. He's like 6 foot, 200 pounds, just gets open, strong after the catch because he's kind of built that way. I can't remember the name, but I got him on a list.
You got to love college athletics has become, hey, we're going to watch these lesser teams and see if we can farm them.
Yeah. Real quick on the transfer portal, one thing that does happen when these coaches get fired early in the season is players can enter the portal from those teams, and it's especially noteworthy for UCLA and Virginia Tech because the firings happened before the first 4 games of the season. So those guys, if they haven't used a red shirt yet, they can take a red shirt for this season, which I think is going to be done. We have already seen one player on VTech's roster, the cornerback Dante Lovett, enter the portal. I do not expect FSU to pursue him. I know there's been some reports that they've contacted him, but that's just what FSU does with guys that do enter the portal. But from what I've been told, I mean, these guys can start taking visits immediately. So that'll be something to monitor if there's other firings across the country and guys enter the portal. Like FSU could be doing portal recruiting in season. I
asked Mike about that too.
What did he say?
He said that they always scout. Like they're always making sure they're checking the box of having intel on a guy, knowing who he is. Does he matter to us? Does he help us with what we envision this team being next year? Plus a possibility of early departures because of NFL or other situations.
He was like, yeah, we've started.
We do our job, Brendan. Quit asking me these questions, basically.
He was making a face as I started the question. I was like, I think I have a history of asking weird questions.
Hell, we don't really care about Kent State if we're being honest.
No, I don't know anything about them. I know Stephen Daly was there last year.
Who is the next job that opens? I was thinking about this.
I mean, do you think would have Florida going to Miami this week has potential?
Yeah, but then they have a bye. Could the firing?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah. Buys are a perfect time for a firing. Reorganize and figure things out.
One thing that I saw is, I don't know if you guys saw this, but UF's running back coach got suspended for 3 games because he slapped an LSU player before the game. And a lot of people thought or think that he would be the interim head coach because he's the associate head coach on their staff.
I mean, you can't make someone a head coach who slaps someone. That's just not.
But that's what I'm saying. So now, does that buy Billy some time?
Well, Florida has the baseball coach who just berates people and just
Yeah, he got suspended too.
Did he really for that?
I think for this season, the first 2 games or something. Yeah.
I mean, 3 games in a college football season and 3 games in a baseball season aren't the same.
True.
Thanks.
So Florida's your answer, or is there anybody?
I mean, that's the first one that came to mind. What about you, Zach?
Who else was on the? Is Luke Fickell on the hot seat?
I think Fickell is a guy who has to worry a little bit about it. I think Sam Pittman, who I love Sam Pittman, has to worry about it.
Arkansas looks good. Like their quarterback's legit. Taven Green.
They got to go win some SEC games. So that's
they lost.
Sam's issue there.
Yeah, his issue is they lose so many close games there.
I feel like Luke Fickell not working at Wisconsin surprises me. Like that's one that just on paper checked
he
all the.
He tried to change Wisconsin football system wise, and I think that was a big misstep.
Yeah, it feels like he's like what he runs is counterintuitive to the talent they can bring in there.
Scott Satterfield.
They're the land of big ass O linemen, 2 tight ends, and a running back who can finish 4.
Yeah, I get that. He tried to modernize.
I know Ron Dane's not walking through that door, but you still play football like Ron Dane might walk through that door.
Scott Satterfield. I know I've seen him on some odds sites.
Trent Dilfer.
That seems like one they'll probably go through the whole season with.
Yeah, but
I just think it's going to be interesting. I think the fact that, VTech had to after the Old Dominion game, and same with UCLA after New Mexico State. I fell asleep before that one got played.
Did we mention Mike Gundy?
No, but yeah. But I feel like Gundy. I think Gundy would get the decency of November.
Yeah, I do too. I think Billy Napier walks into this weekend as the front runner just because of the potential for, let's say you look really bad again. Let's say you're, the guy you pitched your wagon to, and DJ Lagway, just clearly not like that. It does not seem totally healthy at this point. Throws multiple interceptions again. It's at Miami. It's a blowout loss in front of recruits. Boosters going to be extra pissed off. That has the potential for volatility.
I think the biggest thing, the biggest issue for Napier's job security is the fact that Lagway has not looked good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that was the biggest. Yes, they played hard for him, but the fact, if it had been Graham Mertz who was doing well at the end of the year, the leeway that the lagway, if you will, that he was given going into this season, I don't think exists. Real quick, if we talk about like the Florida State perspective of this, I mean, the amount of shit that they got when they got rid of Willie Taggart a year and a half into it, and like that's just now the norm.
Yeah,
and they were ahead of the curve on that one.
Yeah.
They were the first. They took which this happens a lot with Florida. I'll give administration over different regimes credit. They do some things that hurt them PR wise, but then it turns out to have been the right move. The ACC lawsuit comes to mind as well with that. But that's just now the norm. Is like you get rid of guys, pretty early on in their tenures. The new part of it we talked about with the UCLA job and Tony White is like for stuff to be happening and Chris to ask, oh, who's next? And we're a month into college football season.
Not even.
And he's not asking an absurd question. Like it's very like this is stuff that would happen in hockey and the NHL. I think a little bit more recently, like in the NBA. It's just new. It's just it is. I've said it before. It is fascinating to me because it creates these dynamics of the timelines with recruiting stuff. Like there's no job. Like I mentioned the NHL and the NBA where guys get fired after a tenth of the way into the season, but it doesn't impact it the same way in terms of NHL is weird where like a new coach can come in and figure things out real quickly. But like the recruiting impact, the roster retention impact, like this is this sport's wild, guys. It's nuts and it's not getting less nuts. I love covering it though for that reason. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who do you have, Chris?
What? Who would I have?
What? Sound like an old man. What? Huh?
Sorry. I think Pittman's probably the one that has to be concerned. I think if they start really poorly in SEC play, it probably ends his tenure.
Who do you guys want to get fired the most? Who would make you kind of happy?
I mean, if things went sideways in Gainesville, I'm not going to act like I wouldn't sit back and enjoy it a little bit.
I kind of like Billy.
I like Billy. I'm on record in the past of saying I like Billy. I think he's a good dude in general, and I think he's a hardworking football coach. It doesn't always work.
I don't get that's like part of it is like he can recruit. I think some of his play designs are really good.
The USF end of game management though is like unforgivable,
and that's like the stuff that just has not happened. Is the game management, the substitutions, like that just seems like the most basic stuff.
He's got a quarterback issue with a kid who is viewed as an extremely highly likely to hit prospect.
I feel like you kind of need to be built of different stuff than he is to manage like an SEC roster. I think he's a little too like nonchalant.
He followed me on Twitter after I trolled him some years ago.
He follows me too.
But it was immediately after a troll when Alex Atkins. I was like, it was Rod Kearney is who they got, and this is like I don't troll as much on Twitter anymore. It's not as I'm getting grayer, more mature. But he followed me when I was like, oh, UF has what was that, Chris? What was that? Let's talk about it. You don't think I'm getting more mature?
I don't think getting grayer equates to getting more mature. Just saying.
Brett, mark that down as the podcast title. Anyways, I can't remember the exact details. I did something making fun of them having two offensive line coaches and Atkins beating them for a guy who ended up flipping back there. Anyway, so again, this sport's stupid. But Billy followed me immediately after that. And I was like, that's not a great sign for him to care that much about it. I remember clocking that back then. To your point, Zach, of him maybe not having the gumption to be living the life of
I just think it kind of shows on the field. Like all those procedure penalties, all those they continue to have stupid penalties in year 4, year 5. Like it just shouldn't be happening with the team that he's completely constructed himself. Are
we rooting for Miami over Florida this weekend?
I'm not rooting for either of them.
I mean, there's going to be Chris. I know. Florida State versus goddamn right, Chris. Yes. But there's going to be a time in that game where something's going to happen, and there's going to be a little flicker of emotion inside of you, down in your loins, perhaps. You're going to feel it. You're going to be like, "Ooh, what was that?"
I would like an undefeated Miami to come in here.
There we go. That's.
But I'm not rooting for Miami.
Okay.
I want chaos, but I also understand the impact of a potential top 5 matchup in Doak in 2 weeks.
Do we think College Game Day, which chickened out and went to Miami. Do you think that if Florida State please Florida State,
I-
talk about this and then
I'm
lose to
trying to-
Virginia next week?
I'm
Answer
trying to
this.
be the non-hot take person here. Like I leave that to Zach. Zach loves a good hot take, and I mean that loving.
You hear that, Zach?
Why the hell do we care if game day comes here? Like,
People want to boo Kirk Herbstreit, and it's cool.
but screw that program.
Like
Seriously,
listen,
like-
I have not watched College Game Day since the snub. I have it. It's like, oh, this is just a bunch of bullshit. So
I'm not one that obsesses over the snub and all that, but like, screw that program. They went out of their way to cause some of what happened to FSU. Like, F them. Like, God, sorry. That's the way I feel. Like,
that's why people want it now. They want them to have to be the infomercial for Florida State.
I guess there's
that
that degree of like, make the person that you hate talk nice about you. I get that.
Honestly,
I get that, but
to me, I still watch, and it's not, obviously, like, I had my feelings about what was said back when FSU was snubbed on there, but I think it's just like part of it's ingrained in the pageantry of the sport to me. Like I college football in my head, like, waking up in the morning, 9 a.m., like you turn on College Game Day. That's just how it computes for me. But I understand why, FSU fans would be, pissed off and not trying to support it. I mean, I don't really watch it for like great analysis. It's more so just seeing the energy of the sport. And I like some of the stuff they do, like the kicking challenge and stuff like that.
well, I do. I'll put it on. Like, it's a background noise on a Saturday morning. And like Saban was doing, I think the route.
You're really taking a hard stance.
Saban was.
Listen, everyone, I'm standing in the paint and not watching it. I haven't watched it in a year and a half.
Saban was doing the route tree a couple weeks ago, and it was interesting. Like, watching him explain it in depth, it's worthwhile. I enjoy that stuff. I love the old NFL. I think it was Jaws that used to do it, the NFL show where he would break down film and plays, and it was like 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday. But it was a great show. I enjoy that. I don't enjoy them driving the narratives of college football, and I understand that's essentially what that show is meant to be, especially with day. But I'm not a fan.
Casual. It's all such casual takes, and they're not bringing anything like groundbreaking to the.
Plus, I can't stand listening to Desmond Howard. If I'm being honest, like, I don't enjoy listening to the man.
I agree.
Boy, we really derailed the shit out of this show today.
I mean, it's Kent State. If people wanted a Kent State breakdown, I'm sorry. I apologize.
They're awful at defense. They're not much better at offense. And they get punch blocked.
As the coaches say, this is about us. Like,
Chris,
yeah.
are they better than East Texas A&M? Oh my
God!
If the two of them played, I think Kent State would win.
Okay.
I don't think they're like better. Like, I don't think they're this team that's phenomenal. I think they have more talented athletes. The roster is slightly better. I think East Texas A&M plays a harder version, like more aggressive version of football.
Dude, they look. I know, obviously, talent mismatch and everything, but they were getting like pissed off at each other during that game. Like those players did not look like they liked each other in the East Texas A&M.
Kent State's just. I mean, the Buffalo game was probably the best they've played in the last 2 years, and they still did everything in their power to make sure they didn't win that game.
Yeah, they have an interim head coach, to be fair.
Yeah.
I watched I was going to do a story like what he said about FSU this week. He literally didn't get asked one question about the FSU game.
He got asked about coming here and what they learned from playing Texas Tech, who they played week 2 and lost 62 to something too. Yeah, like the spread.
What do you want the guy to do?
The spread's what, 42.5, 44, it's somewhere in that ballpark, right? Like, yeah, it's like 6 touchdowns. I think FSU has a real chance of covering again, especially because Gus likes to run it up against these types.
He does. Gus likes to score a lot of points against shitty teams. He does that very well.
I'm good with it.
All right. You want to move into some recruiting talk?
Yep. And I got to run. I got the doctor's appointment in a few minutes here. Wish me luck, boys.
Don't get blown away when you open that door.
I think he's gone.
You think? He's like the Candyman. If he says blower 3 times, he'll just reappear.
All right. So I learned this week that Florida State is switching up their strategy when it comes to in-season recruiting. And that means that before this week, I think Florida State was planning to host several official visitors for their upcoming rivalry game against Miami on October 4th. We had 3 down. I think they probably had 2 of those down, and Chris Carbon, the Georgia Tech commit, and then Gustav Henriks Ross, the Swedish-based defensive end. And I'm told they're no longer planning to host those prospects for OVs that weekend. And that's because they really liked how their setup was for the Alabama game. That was also a game that they did not host any OVs for, but they did host a ton of unofficial visits for over 100 for that weekend. Multiple guys stayed several days in Tallahassee, like after the game into Sunday, and even into Monday for one guy in particular, the quarterback, Kaden Bryant. So I think they're going to try to replicate that model for the Miami game. And I think a huge reason for that is because even just hosting a few official visitors on campus during a game weekend consumes a lot of time for the coaching staff, for multiple members to make sure everything's coordinated. You obviously have a huge support staff, but you want to make those guys on OVs feel like they're the center of attention, right? You're already kind of consumed by a game weekend and all that goes into prepping that. And I think especially with the big game, with a number of other unofficial visitors expected for that game, you either are going to spend less time than you want to with the OVs, or not spend as much time as you want to with the larger in quantity unofficial visitors. So that means that FSU is likely to host their official visits for some of those less marquee matchups at home throughout the rest of the season. Wake Forest, Pitt, and Virginia Tech are I think the only 3 other home games after the Miami game. So someone asked on the message board, like, what do you think of this strategy? Because part of why hosting OVs for the Florida Tech or the Miami FSU game could be tough, and getting the kids that you want there is because Florida also plays Texas in state that week. But someone pointed out that like some of those other weekends later in the fall, when FSU plays Pitt, South Carolina, LSU play, Georgia and Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Texas. Like there's a number of other big matchups that happen regionally on those other weekends. So I guess, Chris, like, what do you think of this strategy shift by Florida State? Kind of, I think, comes with the success they've had on the field so far. And do you think it'll help them out in the end?
I was going to say, I think it speaks to the fact that they've had success, and they believe it's going to continue to trend in that direction as they move forward in this season. Nothing says you can't try to get those same prospects in for unofficials for this game or another game coming up. And I think that's something they'll try to do. And I think there's something too, if a prospect's willing to come for the unofficial and then return for an official, that speaks a little bit to how that recruitment is going, or at least where you stand with them. I don't have an issue with it. I know they've never been enormous fans of game day officials, especially for big games, because there is just such a gap with when the head coach and some other people can be around you, because obviously, 1, the game itself, but 2, pregame, postgame with locker room. You also want to dedicate a little bit of your time to your current players in that setting. And there's a degree of when you have an official, you have dinner set up, you have certain things tied into the official that you have to get done. That changes the schedule. So it doesn't shock me that they've moved in this direction. I don't think it's a negative. I just think you got to manage it properly. And if you are moving somebody off, you need to know with confidence that you're going to get them in at a future date. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and believe they've done an effective job of doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they really like the fact that they were able to get so many quality prospects on campus for the Alabama game unofficially. And they think they can do that, similarly for the Miami game. And I think, like you said, this doesn't mean that they can't host quality 2026 prospects on campus unofficially. They did that some for the Alabama game, and they'll do that, I think, even more for the Miami game, considering the success they've had on the field, and hopefully that they'll continue to have on the field leading up to that matchup. So yeah, I do. To me, like, I do think it makes sense. I think hosting OVs for other, ACC games later in the season is also, a pretty good plan. In addition to like just having a less marquee matchup and being able to probably spend more time, the coaching staff being able to spend more time with those recruits, you're also closer to signing day. And I think that also plays a role in scheduling OBs because, the signing day is I think December 3rd this year. So it's right after the season ends, and FSU obviously travels to UF to end the season this year. And I think you want to get those OBs in as late as possible to try and get those lasting impressions, nearing signing day. So, yeah, I think it makes sense. I guess we'll see kind of what the turnout is for the Miami game. Working on confirming some names for that one, but I think it'll be one of the most well-attended games from a recruiting standpoint when you look at just the overall talent expected in the Mike Norvell era. I mean, it has the potential to be an all-time, matchup between FSU and Miami if both teams handle business over the next few weeks. So excited for that. Hopefully it's a night game too. Need a night game for that one.
Yeah, should find out Monday, hopefully, with regards to that. Who is one visitor for the Kent State game that you're intrigued by, excited by, some emotional response to?
Yeah. I think the defensive lineman, Yaya God. Hopefully I'm saying that right.
If you're not, that's still an awesome name, so let's go with it.
No, it is pretty cool. So he just decommitted from UCLA this past week, the same day that they fired Deshaun Foster. He's a 3-star defensive lineman out of Tennessee, and he's kind of a perfect fit for a Tony White, defensive front. He's can play multiple positions on the D line, and this is a guy that Florida State's been on. I think they offered him like maybe the day of or the day after Tony White got hired at FSU in early December. So like this is a guy that they've liked for a long time. This defensive staff. They've developed a strong relationship with him, and I think I talked to him before this visit. He told me that he thinks Tony White's a mastermind on defense. So very clear that he has high interest in FSU. I think they want to he's never visited campus. He was supposed to in the spring. I think I
was trying to remember if it was junior day or spring where the visits were on the docket, but never materialized.
I think it was the weekend of the tragedy on campus.
Okay.
Spring ball from continuing. But yeah, so he's planning to make it. That's probably the one that excites me the most. This weekend was never going to be big for FSU, just considering it's family weekend, and that's for hosting unofficial visitors that are staying overnight, like getting
good luck finding a hotel.
It is not easy. So that is definitely a hurdle for them. But yeah, he's one that excites me. And there's a few other guys that they're kind of like fringe, targets that they're looking at, potential guys that could earn offers if they check out in person. But he's probably the highlight of the weekend. We'll get a better idea of who FSU expects in when we, get their list here soon.
So there's 2 names I'll mention. One's at 26. It's running back Cooper Crosby. He reached out to me last night and let me know he was coming. He camped here this summer, and I liked him a ton. I actually sent him to a couple of coaching contacts at lesser schools as like, hey, this kid's really good. He is committed to Louisiana, but he's a good receiving, rushing running back, and he's a decently well-built kid who runs really hard, has nice quickness, good hands, just a lot of parts of the skill set I like. In this day and age where you build a roster to, 100 plus and you're looking for pieces that kind of just make you a better football team, the Willie Suarez's of the world, for lack of a better description, the guy who definitely helps you every day in practice and you can rely upon in a game if necessary. I think Cooper Crosby is a kid that definitely fits into that description for me. And then Jamarcus Johnson's a 28 D lineman that they offered this week at Toombs County up in Georgia. He's just a man-child, and he told me he's coming down, so looking forward to that. They offered him and Prince Chi, I'm not sure how you pronounce Prince's last name, at Thomas County Central, both kids in younger classes at D-line who are both monsters in Georgia. Anything else recruiting-wise that's like, I could throw a couple hoops things in there. Gage Mayfield's going to come off the board to OU here in the coming days. I think that actually might be today. Placid Twins, who FSU moved on from, are also coming off the board. In general, FSU's got 4 committed for hoops currently, and I think they may add a 5th. The main name to know moving forward of guys who have not yet been on campus for an official is Abdou Toure. He's supposed to come in later in October, towards the middle part of October. But they've kind of dwindled down their options intentionally because they do have the commitments they have and just how it's going to work out with building the roster for the following season.
Yeah, from a just overall general recruiting, football recruiting stuff, I think the FSU is swinging at some big flip targets. Nothing like imminent, but I think that Miami game is one they have circled to try and get some of those guys there unofficially. I talked to a guy like Caden Hall. He's a big frame safety committed to UF, and he told me he's deciding between whether to go to the FSU UM game or to the Florida-Texas game that weekend. And I think that, obviously, with him being a UF commit, if he does end up going to the FSU game, that'll be kind of a sign of where his status stands. So we'll check in with him as that approaches.
Alabama still in the mix with him?
He said it's mostly Oklahoma and FSU. So,
I know before he committed to UF, it always felt like it was kind of UF, FSU, and Alabama were the big 3 with him. So
yeah, no, he's definitely a guy that FSU has turned up the heat for recently. He kind of is a perfect fit for their rover safety spot. Just kind of, some people think he could grow into a linebacker, and that's kind of what you want in that role. Like, he's athletic enough to cover and stuff too.
Look at Evan Cooper the other day, Tuesday. Go find a video talking about Ashland Barker, and I wish I had, I think 5 or 6 Ashland Barkers and 5 and 6 Earl Little Juniors. Caden Hall's got some Ashland Barker to him with probably more high level athleticism.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, definitely stay tuned to the site over the next few weeks. It should be exciting as FSU continues to succeed on the field. We'll have all the recruiting updates that coincide with that here coming up.
All right. I think that's good. So go get some Chattanooga whiskey, especially cola type with that word I couldn't pronounce in it. And and go buy a home or rent a home or do something with your home. But call the Turner Group if you're doing it because they're good people. All right, for Zach, for Chris, for Brendan in the Subaru, for Brett in the background with the fan that was going 1,000 miles per hour when he got on here. This is On the Bench. Have a great day. Enjoy the Kent State game. Enjoy family weekend. If you're coming for family weekend, drive safely. Have a good one.